So for this project, we're going to make a race car inside of Tinkercad. We're going to go ahead and 3D print those race cars to make a buck. We're going to take that buck and take it over to the vacuum former to make a mold for an RC car or even a shell for a NASCAR vehicle. So let's go and get started. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go inside of Tinkercad, click on Designs on the left-hand side, or you might even have a tab on top that says Designs, then click Create, 3D Design. Once you're inside of Tinkercad, make sure that you're inside of millimeters, so you can click on Settings and it should be set to millimeters. Then you could rename this file up here. So you could give it your last name or your first name and then the name of the project. Okay, so we're going to bring 3 different models over to our work plane here. So we're going to bring over a cube, a cylinder, and a cube that is a hole. Then we're going to click on the cylinder, and over here you can have this drop down menu. It's going to say sides. You're going to drag it all the way to the right to 64, and on this cube over here we're going to go click on the cube. We're going to click on the height. Make sure you have the height selected. So this white square on top, we're going to click on that. I'm going to change the height from 20 to 10. Then I'm going to click on this back corner here, and on the right hand side I'm going to change the 20 to 60, and I'm going to click on the front right corner. I'm going to zoom out and change that to 120. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to move this red rectangle to the center. I'm going to bring these 2 objects close together, and I'm going to try to find the center of this cylinder here, and I'm going to move this cube that's a hole to halfway through this cylinder. So one way you can figure out if it's halfway is if these black squares here are touching the edge of this cube that's a hole. So you can click on top if you want. You could have your cylinder selected, and then I'm going to tap the right key on my keyboard to move it to the center. So that should be about half of this cylinder here. I'm going to select both of those and group, and since they're the same height, it'll cut this in half. Now I'm going to rotate this half cylinder 2 different times. So I'm going to go to a front view. I'm going to click on this arch on top. I'm going to left click and then click on the degree, and I'm going to change it to either 90 or -90. But we want this curved part facing up. So try out both of those, either -90 or 90. Sometimes Tinkercad will flip it the other way that you don't want it to. So you just want this curved part on top. And then I'm going to rotate it one more time. So I still have that half cylinder selected. I'm going to click on this curve here, click on the 0, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees again. Okay, so we're going to move this half cylinder to the top of this red rectangle, and we're going to change the height. So I want to get to a view so I can see this black cone on top. I'm going to start dragging up, and I'm going to change the height to 10. I'm going to move it to this back left corner here. Select both of those, click on Align, and then click on this black dot towards the front left, and that should align it to the front. I'm going to click on the back corner. I'm going to change the 20 on the back. I'm going to change that to 50. I'm going to change this front 20 to 60. And that should be the same width as that red rectangle that we have there. So while we have this shape selected, I'm going to click on Duplicate, top left, and I'm going to move this duplicated shape over to the right. So you can have both shapes selected. You could click on Align, and I'm going to click on this black dot towards the front. And you could also move around the edge to make sure it's aligned with the back. Now with this right curved shape selected, I'm going to click on the height, change the 10 to 14, and this one on the right, this half curve, this half cylinder should be higher than the one on the left. Now I'm going to click off of that half cylinder. I'm going to click back on the red rectangle. I'm going to click on Duplicate. While I have that red rectangle selected, I'm going to select a corner. I'm going to change the width of that duplicated red rectangle to 25, and I'm going to move around while I still have it selected. I'm going to select the height, change it from 10 to 24. Now I'm going to go back to that red rectangle in the middle. I'm going to duplicate it one more time. While I have that red rectangle selected, I'm going to click on the corner. I'm going to change the width of that to 96. I'm going to change the height of it, that same rectangle that we had selected. I'm going to change the height to 14 and enter. So at this point we could select all the shapes here that we've made. we could go to solid color and we could turn them the same color. After that, we're going to bring over a orange cylinder. And with that orange cylinder selected, you're going to have this drop down menu. If it's not showing and you have the cylinder selected, you can click on this drop down menu and you're going to turn sides all the way up to 64, the bevel all the way to 2.5, the segments to 10. From there, we're going to rotate that cylinder. If you have to rotate around to find the arch, that's going to rotate this curved forward, rotate around the side, find that arch, might have to move around, click on that arch from the side view, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then we're going to change the height, so click on the height from 20 degrees to 32. Now we're going to take this object and try to get it close to the center. We're going to change the width to 56. Move it towards the center. And you're going to have some space on both sides. This is going to be the hood part of the car. And we're going to click on this front corner square. And we're going to change the width of this to 70. And you can center that. Let's check the height. Let's make sure it's 32. We can even make this hood part a little bit smaller. So we can click on that white square. We can change it to 54. So you have enough space, an even amount of space on both sides. So if we're looking at this car from the top, the gap on the left-hand side should be the same as the right-hand side. Now with the hood part in place, we could go ahead and select all of our objects. So you could click and drag your mouse over everything. You could hold down Control and A to select everything. And you could click on Group. So all those objects are selected. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna round off this front bumper and back bumper so that you don't have these sharp edges here. So we're gonna bring out a red cube and a cylinder. And we're gonna go to the top view. And we're gonna line up this red cube with this grid. And if it makes it easier to see these shapes here, if you have the cube selected and you click on perspective view, sometimes you can't see the edge of that grid. So that's why I clicked on that while that was selected. Now I'm gonna click on the cylinder. I'm gonna make this cylinder fit inside of that grid as well. So I'm gonna select both and group to cut out a chunk of that red cube. I'm gonna change the length of this new shape by clicking on the front corner, changing it from 20 to 30, and I'm gonna move around the view. I wanna change the height from 20 to 40. And if your object is a solid, you can go from a solid to a hole. We're gonna zoom out. And we're gonna take this over to the back bumper there. And you wanna line up this curved part with this edge of the car and then this curved part on the bottom left with the front side of the car. And if your object keeps jumping around, skipping around like that, you can click on Snap Grid, change it to 0.5 and it shouldn't do that as much. And with that same object selected, I'm gonna click on Duplicate. I'm gonna drag that off and I'm gonna rotate this shape so that it rounds off this front part of the bumper. Now with that new shape selected, I'm gonna click on Mirror. I'm gonna click on this vertical direction here. I'm gonna slide over that new shape. Let's say that this is the front of the vehicle. I'm gonna line up that edge of the new shape with the front side of the car. And let's say this is the side of the car here. I'm going to use my keyboard while I have that shape selected, and I'm just gonna tap down the down arrow. That's gonna help line up that new shape with the side edge of my bumper. And you can zoom out. Now we can select both of those shapes. We can duplicate them at the same time. We can scoot that over to the back side. Let's call this the back side of the car. You can scoot those over, and now we could mirror those shapes. We want to mirror it horizontally, and we might have to move those shapes just a little bit so that the right side of our new shape is hitting the back side of our bumper, and that these curves here on the front side of the car are smoothing out the side of the car. We might have to scoot this one back individually. So you can make small adjustments. I'm going to take this bottom shape and I'm going to duplicate it, move it to the side. I'm going to change the length of it. So I'm going to click on a white corner from 30 to 16. And then I'm going to change this front side here from 20 to 24. I'm going to move that over to the side. We're going to use that later. We're going to zoom out. I'm going to bring over a cylinder that's a hole already. And we're going to change both sides from 20 to 24. I'm going to move around the side. I'm going to find this arch here from the side, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm going to move this cylinder downward by clicking on that black cone. And I'm going to change it to -5. Let me move this so you can see that. So clicking on the black cone, start moving it around, and I'm going to change it to -5. We'll change the width of this from 20 to 11. And I'm going to go to the top view. I'm going to wrap around the front, click on top again. I'm going to take that. This is going to be for the wheel well. And I'm going to take some distance, or have some distance here between this front part of the shape that we made for the bumper and that new shape that we're going to use for the wheel well. So I'm going to select that wheel well. I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to move it over to the side. So you could use your arrow keys on your keyboard. You could click left and go all the way to the left, or you could have your shape selected and drag it over to the left while holding down Shift. You want the same amount of space for each wheel well. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to do the same thing with the back. You could have both of those shapes selected. You can click on duplicate. While both of those shapes are selected, you can hold down Shift and drag to the back. Again, you want to leave the same amount of space, this little gap here, this gap here, and the gap should be the even amount of space. Now from this view here, I could zoom out. I can select all these shapes. So I have the two shapes that we're going to use for the back bumper, the two shapes that we created for the front bumper, and then the wheel well gaps. And we can group everything. Once this red outline goes away, we could check to make sure that it created the wheel wells and the curves for the bumper. We won't make mirrors for this car just because it's going to get caught in the mold that we make on the vacuum former. And since this will be a simplified car, we're not going to make the windows either. We're going to use this shape that we left aside. We're going to use this for the bottom bumper to curve that. So we're going to rotate that shape. I'm going to go around the side so I can see this arch. Click on that, change it to 90. We're going to change the length of this part from 40 to 62. I'm going to go to the front view. You can use this view cube. And I'm going to move this down by clicking on the cone. Once you start moving it down, you can also just change it by clicking on the number. I'm going to change it to -8. That -8 should line up that curve with the bottom of your car. And you can zoom in. We want this smooth part to be lined up with the edge. And it doesn't have to be lined up exactly, but you do want to create a curve for the bottom part of your bumper. And we want to make sure that we're covering the whole side of the bumper. So we're going to have to go to the top view, click on that shape, and scoot it over. And we just want to make sure that this hole is going from one side of the car to the other side of the car. And now we can group those two. Now we just have to make some tires. So we're going to bring over a cylinder. That's a solid. While it's selected, we're going to go to sides, move that all the way over. Click on the bevel, move that all the way over, and segments all the way over. We're going to change the width and the length from 20 to 22. So 22 and enter, 22 and enter. Let's click on the height, change that to 10. We can even change the color. I'm going to bring out a cylinder that's a hole. I'm going to change the length and width of that cylinder from 20 to 16. So 16 and enter, 16 and enter. I'm going to select the tire and that hole that we made. Click on align, and we're going to align these using that black indicator on the front and then the black indicator on the side. Let's group those two shapes. Let's bring out another cylinder. With that cylinder selected, we're going to click on sides, drag it all the way to the right to 64. We're going to click on the length and width, change it from 20 to 18. We're going to change the height, so from 20 to 11. I'm going to move up the bevel. Let's change the color to a light gray. Let's take these two shapes and center them. So with those two shapes selected, I'm going to click on align. Click on this black indicator in the middle in the front, and then the black indicator on the left to center both of those. And then we're going to group both of those shapes. Select both, click on group. Then we're going to click on the color, and then we can click on multicolor so that it can keep its individual color. I'm going to select the wheel, go from an angle, And I'm going to click on the arch. We're going to rotate these 90 degrees so that the rim is facing the front. So I'm going to go to the front view. I'm going to start dragging up on this cone, and I'm going to change it to -4. Click on the front view. I'm going to line it up with the wheel well. You could duplicate that wheel, move it over to the front part of the car. Go to click on top, and I'm going to select both of those wheels and I'm going to align them. So you can just click on this align indicator here on the left hand side, and I'm going to move them back so that just the rim is facing out of this car here. You could change the snap grid to maybe 1 millimeter and use your arrow keys. So I'm hitting the up arrow, and I'm only going to move these wheels until I could see the rim. All right, so I could see the rim there. I'm going to move around just so it looks like it's lined up. I'm going to click on front. I'm going to move these wheels. You can use your arrow keys to align the wheels a little bit better. All right, so you should have a small gap around the whole wheel in both the front and the back of the car. So I'm going to go back to top view. You can zoom in. I'm going to select both the front tire and back tire. I'm going to click on duplicate. I'm going to zoom out. With them selected, I'm going to move them to the back. Again, this is the duplicated wheels. And I'm going to click on mirror. I'm going to click this vertical mirror here. And using the arrow keys, I could tap those wheels into the wheel well with just the rims sticking out. I'm going to change my view, wrap around the back side, make sure that these wheels are lined up. If they jump, you can always go back to snap grid, change it to 0.5, and they won't jump as much or skip. There you go. Check the front again. Looks good. And I'm gonna just change this color from orange to red. The color of this car doesn't really matter because we're gonna 3D print these, and it's just gonna be the color of the plastic anyway. For this car, we're not gonna create any mirrors or a spoiler because we don't want to make anything that's going to get caught inside of the mold that we're going to make from this 3D print. So we're going to select all these shapes here, or you can hold down Control and A so that you can make sure that those back tires are selected as well, and click on group. You could go from solid to multicolor if you want to still see the colors. You're going to click on export and export it as an STL. That's going to go over to your downloads folder. Make sure that you attach that file to Teams for this project or this assignment. So if you have any questions of how to create any of the new shapes that we need to make the bumpers, how to find the different shapes, and how to align them, go ahead and let me know. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And feel free to watch any of the other related videos.